Welcome back, everyone. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there is a keynote address on Mission 2030, India progressing towards achieving SDGs for a better tomorrow. I would like to welcome Sanyukta Samaddar, advisor, SDG NITI Aayog for this session. Welcome, Ms. Samaddar.
At the outset, let me congratulate ET government for successfully curating the third edition of the National Governance Summit. It gives me immense pleasure to deliver this keynote address on India and its progress on SDGs at this summit. In a very short while, the Governance Summit has become a very important fixture in fostering dialogue on public policy in the country and has also become an excellent platform to forge newer and very strong relationships and partnerships among various stakeholders. So, as you know, the Sustainable Development Goals present the most comprehensive and holistic paradigm encompassing the social, economic, environmental dimensions of development adopted by the country along with the world community in the year 2015. Our Honorable Prime Minister expressed deep commitment of India to this UN resolution on the 2030 agenda at the UN General Assembly Summit in 2015, when he stated that India, as a country with one-sixth of the world's population, holds the key to the world achieving the SDGs, and that the SDGs are very perfectly mirrored in our national development agenda. The core principle, which lies at the heart of the SDGs, the leave no one behind, resonates with our essence of our development agenda of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas. India, home to one-sixth of our humanity, is cognizant of its role and responsibility in working towards a sustainable future of the planet and all its life. It is undisputable that achieving the target set under this broad framework is imperative for the country to develop faster and sustainably, as well as to meet the aspirations of its large, young, and vibrant population. We have pledged deeply to accelerate the implementation to achieve the SDGs by the year 2030, and in some cases, definitely before that target year. NITI Aayog, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, is the nodal agency in Government of India for the overall coordination and supervision of the Sustainable Development Goals. This involves building preparedness across the nation for adopting and integrating the SDG agenda in our overall policy planning process, in our monitoring the progress of SDGs, and also in localizing the SDGs at the state and union territory level, while building capacities of state governments in various aspects of SDG implementation, monitoring, planning, and taking it further to the level of the districts and below district levels to the level of the blocks and the talukas, as we call, by intensive engagement with our states and union territories. This framework, ladies and gentlemen, was adopted by 193 countries in the year 2015 and has since then redefined the development policies and government priorities all across the world, including the developed and the developing nations. India, together with the world, has marched into this decade of action, the last 10 years of the SDGs. And with less than just 10 years remaining to achieve the global goals, nations are accelerating the design and implementation of the sustainable solutions to the world's biggest challenges, ranging from poverty to gender inequality to climate change and so on. Our commitment to SDGs has only strengthened in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and amidst our efforts to chart a new course of development for the post-pandemic future, which will be resilient and which will be green and which will be better. Our states, ladies and gentlemen, are active stakeholders in our SDG action. It's our firm belief sitting in the central government that the country can achieve these ambitious goals only if our states and union territories take this lead in adopting and steering the process of SDG localization. Through our intensive SDG localization efforts, which we do through the NITI Aayog, we have taken the SDGs to all our states and to the 700 plus districts in our country. Fostering subnational peer learning, competitiveness is the broad approach we took when we released the world's first government-led subnational SDG India Index in the year 2018. Since then, 3 editions have happened of the SDG India Index and Dashboard annually, which rank our states and UTs based on the SDG performance. And this comprehensive policy tool captures the progress on the SDGs, considering the great complexity of interlinked global goals and their reflection in our national priorities. Now we are in the fourth year, and the index has been comprehensively documenting and ranking the progress made by union territories and states towards achieving the SDGs. The index, ladies and gentlemen, has reshaped the entire SDG framework adoption and localization discourse in the country. I do remember when we began this process in the year 2017, we were just holding national and regional consultations, trying our best to sensitize not only the central ministries but the states into understanding what the SDGs are. Well, we have moved far, far away from there, and we have crossed milestones since then. This has resulted in all our states and union territories instituting monitoring systems and preparing strategies aligned to the goals of the 2030 agenda, which are very customized to the local and the hyperlocal context. Through these localization efforts and the index, now the country's first district level SDG index for the 120 districts of the eight northeastern states, we continuously try to foster this cooperative and competitive federalism, both for our states and UTs and also for our districts. While at the same time, we are working individually with almost all the states and in terms of developing their SDG frameworks for their own districts to foster this sense of competition. Our goal is definitely to ensure that the fruits of India's progress and development percolate to each of our 1.3 billion citizens, leaving no one behind and no community, no gender, no caste behind. States and union territories, as you must have seen, play a very crucial role in localizing the SDGs. There are several exemplary interventions which have taken place at that level, including the institution of SDG focused units, embedded in the planning and finance departments, thematic working groups headed by very senior officials and with stakeholders from outside the government as well for periodic review by the political leadership. All these improvements, all these process engineering has engendered a whole of government approach towards the SDGs with a lot of horizontal and vertical convergence across multiple government departments. The pandemic and its multifarious impacts have, however, further intensified this endorsement of this approach, which appreciates the interlinked nature of the SDGs. In fact, this cross-sectoral approach, which goes away from the siloed approach of government departments, this prominently features in our national agenda and flagship programs. While governments are key actors in the entire journey towards achieving these ambitious targets under the 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development, one must understand that these global goals cannot be realized through the government and the government alone. Civil society, the community, the private sector, all have equally very strong roles in trying to adopt and in materializing this agenda. And therefore, a very well acknowledged role is embedded in the agenda itself for all these stakeholders, including the civil society and the private sector. Strengthening and consolidating India's position as a global leader on the SDGs at the highest SDG forum of the United Nations, in the high-level political forum on sustainable development in the year 2020, we presented the country's second voluntary national review to all the 193 UN member states. This HLPF is the foremost international platform for follow-up and review of the progress on the 17 SDGs. And this India VNR, it's called the Indian Voluntary National Review 2020, undertook an amazing paradigm shift in terms of embodying the whole of society approach, both in letter and spirit. In fact, as part of this process, we curated one of the largest listening exercises through regional and national consultations with over 1,000 civil society organizations and their overarching networks of 100 civil society networks. And these community organizations which work with local communities, in fact, people living in the most vulnerable situation and at-risk communities. So you can imagine the expanse and the level which we kind of also traversed in trying to get these voices across in India's National Voluntary Review. Similarly, we believe as an engine for growth and innovation, the private sector and private sector investments are very crucial in galvanizing the market forces. It is pretty well understood that SDGs will require the mobilization of domestic and international finance and financing options as a complement to public sector resources. In fact, with all the development goals, financing is the most crucial element in this entire progress journey. And mobilization of all types of and all sources of capital is fundamental to complement this provision of scaled up public investments made by the government at all levels. So, therefore, the need for blended finance, therefore, the need for a very strong private sector role in the SDG agenda. And now we are seeing increasingly that private sector investors are seeking investments that meet not only the financial objectives, but more so the non-financial objectives. These investment strategies include the environmental, social, and governance, what as a bracket, we call it the ESG investments, responsible investments, social impact investments, and green finance. So, while different in mandate and scope, these investment strategies aim to achieve the positive social and environmental or even the development outcomes in addition to the financial returns. We are also witnessing definitely a corporate actions which go far beyond the traditional concept of the corporate social responsibility and the activities which come under the Companies Act of the CSR. Companies have begun adopting the SDGs in their core operations and procurement with the aim of embedding environmentally sustainable and socially conscious practices in their entirety of value chain and also in their corporate governance processes. This is being guided definitely by the business responsibility and sustainability reporting frameworks, the market demand for compliance with such sustainability standards and certifications, and the ever expanding consumer awareness and consciousness in the country as in the entire globe. While definitely, ladies and gentlemen, we take pride in our accomplishments, we are very well aware of the path ahead in our journey to meet the targets under the SDG framework on time, which are very ambitious targets. India needs to progress faster on several challenges of nutrition, of learning outcomes, of women's active participation in the economy, of gainful employment, and further of definitely of reducing pollution and in resource efficiency. So, various government led initiatives have been rolled out, definitely cognizant of these challenges that the country is facing in these areas, in conjunction with establishing monitoring and review mechanisms for tracking the progress all across these sectors. The COVID-19 pandemic, again, I have to say, has taught us all that the resilience of a nation is severely tested when faced with unprecedented adversities. Efforts from all walks of life, all walks of society, and the government are being channelized in this fight against the pandemic. We have put forward the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat, which is being translated into reality faster and faster, an image of self reliant India through which we are building back better and faster. Through these focused efforts, we are bringing the economy back on track, building the world class resilient infrastructure, putting in place technology driven systems to fulfill new ambitions and aspirations, while fully utilizing the energy of our vibrant demography and taking advantage of the power of our the market demand and the supply forces. At the end, I would definitely like to say that we must remind ourselves, each one of us, that we do not have the luxury of time, and it is our individual responsibility that these global goals and this development agenda sees actual fruition and makes a difference to the lives of the people who are in the corners of the country and who are in the most difficult situations. We have just 10 years ahead of us, less than 10 years ahead of us now, to achieve these goals and targets that we have set together as a one community. A true whole of society effort towards realizing the SDGs, which includes everyone, governments, civil society, private sector, citizens, is the need of the hour. And the faster we all synergize our efforts, the better. We cannot leave anyone behind in this endeavor, and we must remind ourselves that our efforts in the coming years will determine the kind of planet our children and their children and generations to come will be born into, and the quality of life they will inherit. Our actions, ladies and gentlemen, in this decade will have a very strong bearing on our future generation scope of aspirations and ambitions. This alone should be enough to motivate us to do our best. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Samaddar, for sharing your knowledge piece with all of us here today. Now we'll move ahead. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, as we join you back after a short break.